Welcome back to Riding the Storms, the Sunday show at 6 p.m. Eastern Time that goes over how you can ride out the storms that life brings you in a biblical way and deal with those trials and tribulations victoriously, because that is what it's all about. We have a hope that is inside of us to which we've been called. And so in order to answer those that would ask us, why, when all of these things are going on, are you still in such a good mood? We have a reason, and this is going to help us tremendously to work it all out. But before we get to Jessie and this amazing practical and supernatural stuff that she has for us today, a quick reminder to go to kingdomlivingwithjessie.com, and that is to make sure that you've taken the first set of courses, the foundation of kingdom living, because that is going to build as she releases the next set of courses that are going to be coming out in March. So you want to get that first one under your belt so that you've got all of the understanding before you go in for that next big giant chunk of meat, right? We want the meat of the word, and you are going to get it. And also, watch your emails for a notification that'll be coming, because you're going to have the opportunity to attend the live taping. This is going to be March 24th, 25th. Details are still to be announced, but it will be absolutely wonderful, exciting. You're going to learn so much and get to hang out with the Illuminate folks and all of your peers that will be in attendance as well. So stay tuned for that. And today's resource to partner with what she's going to share would be her book, The Anointing Overflows. So you're going to want to get that. She goes into so much depth and helps to explain what it is, why you're doing it, and it's going to help to kind of clear things out as well in your homes too, right?
Right. Yep. And we did a great episode that complements The Anointing Overflows. And that episode you can find, I can't remember if it was a Rise Up or a Riding the Storms. But we talk about anointing and the anointing oil, how to make it. We go into different sources you might need to make your own. And then we talk about how to use it in general. So I encourage you to utilize those tools. They're a really good resource.
Amen. It was good. So I learned so much about the different oils, what it meant, with a
Yeah, that was
purpose.
interesting, huh? Like looking at the biblical oils that were used and the purposes. I found that interesting as well.
That was a lot of fun. And so today I'm really excited, because this is practical, what you're going to be covering, but it is, well, it's like you said, it is strategic navigation of when chaos or just confusion and when it seems like life is beating you up on every side from every angle. What in the world do you do? How do you handle it so that you're not just caught up in basically a tornado going around you full blast, where you can't even grab one thing when it's all happening simultaneously?
Yeah. Yeah. And so many of us experience those storms where it seems like you're getting hit on every angle. You've got issues with your job, which causes issues with your finances. That affects your housing and your bills and, being able to make payments for things like that and groceries. It affects things in your household. You may have children acting up, or maybe having quarrels with a spouse or a relative that you live with. And it may even impact even more than that. And we get stuck in these spirals where it just feels like, Lord, I have nothing to grab onto. So, a lot of those, I've gone through several of those throughout the years. And in that process, the Lord kind of, gave me just this little thing that I do that kind of helps. And really, it's a tool that can be used to kind of just strategically navigate those storms. So it starts with just a piece of paper. If you do better with lines, do lines. Some people do better with lists and lines. Others do better with like a calendar or a blank piece of paper. I'm one that I have trouble like doing bubble storms or mapping things out that way. I don't think that way. So for me, usually I'll take a large piece of paper and I will separate it into 3 columns. And I start off by asking, at the top, I'm going to ask, what are the major problems? And I try to put them in very brief sentences, so things like, my job isn't giving me the money I need to pay the bills. I need to pay the bills. Maybe it's, I need another job. You only got, if you're not having enough to pay the bills, you only have 2 options. Either you get a new job or you have to increase hours somehow or increase pay. So if that job does not allow you the flexibility to increase hours or pay, you have no other option but to start looking for another job. It could be that you're behind on several bills or you have large debt. So, just write it down, even separate, I'm behind in these small bills. I'm behind in these large bills. And then, problems with children. My son is out of control. Put it down. I can't talk to my husband. Put it down. So then I begin, I kind of put all that at the top so I can see what are the problems, what are the issues. These are the things that we need God to break through for us. And so then the first thing that I'll start with is asking for that breakthrough. I'll say, Lord, these problems are beyond, my means and ability to navigate them. And I just need you to take a hold of my hand and pull me up through this water so that I can see how to walk on the water over these issues. Show me how to, show me what I can do in this situation. Or show me who can help me. Because, when I went through a lot of my issues, that seemed to be more of the issue. There were things, like moves that I could make, things that I could shift to make the situation better. But the problem was that I had so much going wrong at one time that I didn't have the time or the energy or the ability to do all of those little changes or shifts myself. I needed, the truth was I needed help. So, there's, when we can put it that way and we can say, okay, maybe I don't have to deal with all of it. Maybe there's someone who's willing to help me, or maybe there's somebody that, I can barter with or pay to help me, or, maybe there's somebody who's willing to take this off my plate. And we never know until we ask. Many of us we don't want to ask. And it looks like that resonated with you. We don't want to admit that we need help.
Yes, that's tough with people being so independent when you're accustomed to pretty much doing everything yourself or managing the household yourself or something. It can be very difficult to admit or to even stop and take the time to reach out for help in the first place, because it seems easier at the moment to just motor through it.
Right. So, really that's the place to start, because, so look at those problems and say, okay, like in this first category, I'm going to break it down into those 3 things. What do I have to do for other things, who can I ask for help and who may be willing to take some of these things off my plate? So you begin to make those lists. And, if it's things with your kids, you know, not being afraid to say, even when your kids are little, to say, you know what, I really need help. Could you unload the dishwasher every night? And, the other kid, you put the dishes away or you load up the dishwasher. And if we are good and we get this done all week and you guys work together, we'll do something special together. And it doesn't have to be, something with money. Like I found a lot of times my kids just wanted time together. So it's like, you know what? If you guys get it done all week, work really well together, we're going to go have fun at the park on Sunday. We'll go walk, we'll play games, you guys actually get to pick, like maybe have a couple activities that don't cost anything or much and say, okay, you guys get to plan out the event. They get even more excited about that. So let them have that control, and maybe you can stir that if they're, because my kids would fight a lot, especially if they had to do chores together. So I would either put them in charge of chores in different areas of the house to say, okay, this week you've got vacuuming and you've got help putting away the dishes and loading them up, right? But if you can get them to work together, say, it goes faster when you work together. So how about you put away and you load up? And maybe while you guys are doing that, you can discuss ideas, things you might want to do together on Sunday with the family and, surprise me, plan something out, make it kind of fun for your kids and say, make a list, but don't tell me, and that can sometimes relieve some of that quarreling tension. My kids usually were pretty much onto it. It's a great idea, when you can get it to work, but the truth is sometimes it doesn't. But don't get disappointed in that. What I found, like with my older kids, as they got older, if I just simply stressed, I have so much on my plate right now, I just need help with one thing. And if you can help do dishes all this week, that will take a lot of stress off. Or if you can help cook dinners this week, can you please help me in that way? And then just let them do it, and if they fight you and say no, well, see if there's somebody else. If there is no one else, then, put it on your list and trust God's going to make a way. So that's where we start, is seeing what can we get help with, what can we take off of our plates. So then the next line, I look at, okay, what do I have to do? And then I begin to plan out, if one of the major issues is the job, the job is not working. It's not enough to support us financially. What do we need to do to shift that? If I need to look for another job, well, then I'm going to put that on the list. I'm going to start looking for a job. Now, I find if you just put just that on your list, it's really hard to hold yourself accountable to follow through. So I go farther. When I went through really rough time after my multiple shoulder surgeries, there was so much that I couldn't do that it got very discouraging. And, I ended up finally, it's like, okay, I really need help looking for work because I'm not even finding anything that physically I can do. So one of the things that was recommended to me was the Work Source Center. So I encourage, even if you have a job, but you need to find something else, a lot of times the staff that are there are really knowledgeable about the jobs available in the area, and they work with a lot of the different companies that are looking to hire. So if anything, it's worth, saying, okay, I've got some time, here's when I can pop over there, even if you have to do it during a lunch break. Go in there, talk to them, get a list of some of the available jobs open, tell them what you're looking for. The ladies that were at my work source center were just so helpful. Like, I said, this is what I need. Like, I need a job where I don't have to have a lifting requirement because I can't lift at the time with my shoulder. And I said, I also need something that is going to give me some flexibility with getting the kids in and out of school. And they would call me when stuff came available. They would say, hey, we think this might be a good fit for you. And, they would give me the information for that job. So that can sometimes be help that you need, extra eyes looking for things that might work better for you in your situation. The other thing they're really good about helping people do up resumes, whatever you need, like they can spend time talking with you. If you haven't interviewed for a long time or applied for a job in a long time, they can set up times to walk through those things, like how do you have a successful interview? Most people, from the old days, like I can remember when I was first applying for jobs, like I always felt like I had to prove myself to the job in order to get the job. But the work source ladies, they taught me that no, like you can interview these companies. Like maybe you don't want to work at that place. Like what questions are you going to ask them? And I'd be like, I can ask them questions. And they're like, yes. Like, they're like, you think through, what questions, what things are important to you? What do you value? What are you looking for to have a good fit job? And they said, ask questions, treat them, you're going in there, you have what they need. You already know that by looking at the job that you're going to apply for, that you have what they need. So you can meet their needs, but the question is, can they meet yours? So interview them as though, you're the one looking to hire. Like, do you really want this job? Make them prove to you that this job is going to work for you. And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting way to look at it. So some of those things are really helpful. And, one of the other things was they, taught me to set goals that, even if it was things that I might not really be interested in, they said, set a goal, apply for a certain number of jobs every week. So, I made that my goal, that I would send out, 5 resumes every single week. So that meant that I had to look, I had to, make sure I sent out those 5 resumes. And then, if I hadn't heard back from those jobs the following week, I would begin to, contact those companies to ask if they had received my resume. And many times that second action the following week, the follow-up with those companies and calling and asking if they had received the resume, that's what opened the door to the interview. So not being afraid to do that follow-up and, looking for that job, those things can help, The other thing is, just being creative, taking a look around, your situation. Is there another way that, you can make things that you have be income for you? Now, that was something Jeff on Right on Radio taught me. If it's not bringing in income for you, then really it's another debt in your life. So
Wow.
looking at things like, do you have something that could be used as that income? Maybe that would be temporarily using your vehicle as an Uber driver or something like that, so that, you're getting some income coming in, but now your vehicle is helping you get that income coming in. Maybe you have an extra room or a basement that you could turn into a room that you could rent out to a college student looking for a place for, the semester, for the year. That would be a way you could turn, part of your space or your home into income. Maybe there's an elderly woman or somebody in your community who could use a one room to stay and is willing to share, a kitchen or things like that. So you can look at different ideas like that to see, long term, like as you're going through this list, you want to look at both short term things that you can do daily, and you want to make sure that you have a list of what you're going to accomplish daily. But at the same time, you also want to build long term. So, what are maybe some more longer term things that you could be working towards or figuring out how you're going to do it? If you have a room to share, there's things that you have to do with that, like advertising. So set a date. Say, okay, on such and such a date, I'm gonna get online. I'm gonna start looking, how much are one room apartments in my area going for? I'm gonna start looking at how much is it gonna cost me to advertise it? Where can I advertise it? Can I do up a flyer? If you need to do a flyer up, put it, on your calendar. Then, put on your calendar all the places you're going to take those flyers and put them up. Grocery stores have bulletin boards, coffee shops have bulletin boards. Those are some of the best because people really use the grocery store and the coffee store ones. But, maybe you can talk to, take one to the universities, to the college, find out who you would talk to there to advertise something. So there's little things that you can do that way. Even be creative. When we lived near colleges, that, a lot of times those students have to pay both for housing and for food. And a lot of them just do campus food and they get, campuses usually do have pretty good food, but honestly, I was a student for many years. I got tired of it. So a few times we had done very creative things like, we knew that the daily meal for the students was $7 a meal. So we advertised and we said, hey, for $3 a meal, you can just pop on in and join us for dinner, and we actually got quite a few that became regulars at our house and
Aw.
loved our cooking, and they loved just the home style environment. They loved, just having a family they could fellowship with and having good old fashioned home cooked food, with fellowship. And so maybe some things like that, if you're really good at cooking, see how you could use that, to make some extra income if that's where things are tight. Or if you make things, crochet or knit or, whatever, see where you can put those products out. And try not to put yourself in more debt creating stuff to give out. Use the resources you have, the things that you have available to you first, and ask the Lord, how can I make income off of what I have available? So those were some of the things, like I had gotten to some of the bazaars and would sell our knitted, crocheted products. If you have kids that do those things too, often that can be a huge draw to your table. People loved it that my boys crocheted and, knit. And so my boys would come to the bazaars with me, and those little old ladies would, be so drawn to our table. They wanted to hear all about these boys that crocheted and wanted to see all their patterns, because Josiah was one, he designed patterns. And so, they wanted to check that out and hear everything he had to say. So sometimes, starting stuff with our kids, like, you know, teaching them business skills and how to entrepreneur, sometimes that can help the family out too, where you're doing something together and you have a table with a collection of things that your family does. And you could, even use like a lot of cities now have the Saturday markets or the Thursday markets that you can look into, and you can, even if you have big gardens, you can get tables like in our town, a table for just a Saturday weekend was about $10 each time. And so, there were people that literally would pick all of their fresh produce out of their garden and sell it there fresh. So, that can be an income thing as well. Um, even if you have neighbors that maybe there's multiple people, um, like in my situation, it was hard because I was limited physically for a period of time. So maybe you have neighbors that are struggling with that too. So sometimes coming alongside of others and brainstorming and saying, hey, like I noticed we're both kind of in this financial rut. Maybe we can help each other out. Let's brainstorm and see if we can come up with an idea that becomes the income revenue for both of us, because maybe you don't crochet fast enough, or maybe you can't make enough product your own, but maybe there's somebody else who can make some too. And when you go in together, then you split the cost of the table, but you're selling products together, or, you know, going into an endeavor together. So sometimes things like that can help if, you're not, if you're looking for a creative avenue. Um, And for some of you, the Lord's just putting on my heart. Some of you have, and I'm not speaking specifically to you, Tracy, so I'll clarify this. But
Oh,
some of us are, very creative, and the Lord has given us um, works of art or books or other things like that. And the Lord's saying, maybe it's time to finish that, to start getting ready to display the beautiful works that He's given you um, as income. So, if that's you, start writing, finish that book, um, start painting and finish those pieces, and let the Lord show you how to get those out, and don't be afraid to walk out in that new space um, and display what He's given you to display. So.
this is such a wonderful business education all in one shot as well. And yeah, I'm thinking of like Habakkuk, you write the vision and make it plain. Now he's obviously talking about, a prophetic vision and what the Lord would have you do. But this is really no different in that you have to get out of the tornado that's happening, stop, and take all of these intangible, it's almost like intangible harassments going on, and
Yeah.
get them nailed down on paper so you can see it, so that you can actually start to plan, identify everything, and work on it accordingly in little ways, instead of being so overwhelmed that it's a simple
Yeah.
way. And I think that is what it will help everyone listening, is that it's simple. This is a simple process, and the key is just doing it and taking the
Yeah.
time to sit down and actually, I call it naming the puppy. Like, you have to name the puppy. If you're
Right.
gonna tell the puppy
Yep.
what to do, you need to name the puppy. And so it's like all of these, just identifying it and working on it. And especially, you brought up the daily, what to address daily versus things that are longer term. It's so easy for those things to become almost juxtaposed if you don't kind of
Right.
it and identify it and really work with stewarding the time you do have in a way that's going to actually bring some good effect into the plan that you're sitting down to make. My
Yeah.
goodness.
And you just keep scheduling. Like if something, I literally would micromanage down to, the hour where it's like, okay, like this hour, that's where my focus needs to be. And then the next hour, that's where my focus needs to be. And when you manage that way, at one point, I was able to do that at one of my jobs where, literally I had pretty much 3 full-time jobs that I was doing within a 40-hour work week. But it was the way that I structured it, where it's like, okay, from such and such a time until, from 8 to 10 or 11, that's when I need to be working on auditing bereavement charts. And then it would be like, okay, from, 10 to 12, that's when I'm going to be making follow-up bereavement calls. Then, I would put the next things, okay, like from such and such a time, I need to work on the volunteers. So, there's different aspects to that. It's like, okay, I've got to do the auditing. I have to have the charts in order. I have to hand out volunteer assignments. I need to interview and recruit new volunteers. Plus, I have to maintain the volunteers that we already have. So how do you like manage all that except for, you have to basically come up with the plan. Like, okay, this time, I'm going to go out from such and such hours and I'm going to be putting up flyers in the community, advertising for volunteers. As they call, I'm going to set up interviews. Then, once I interview them, when you get the volunteers, you have to train them. So you set those dates, those times for the training that they're going through. Then it's like, okay, once a month, we want to support our volunteers. We don't want them to get tired out. We want to do something special just for them. So, I look ahead of time. What staff do I have who will volunteer one night a month to feed back into our volunteers and maybe talk about, what are the challenges of caregiving and working with people? How do we navigate certain problems? So we'd pick topics that those staff could talk about and address with the volunteers. And then we would do special activities, food, and just have times for question and answers. And just those little things, kept the volunteers coming back every month. And then, if they had issues or problems in their family, things that would come up, it's like, how can we support you during this time? And, so it's that constant, what can you navigate or change with your time? When my kids were really little, time was one of the things that I needed the most help with because I just didn't have it. It's like, how do you focus on getting all your school work done when you've got 6 kids wanting all your attention all the time? So I would look for things, like I would get really involved with certain churches, or I would get to know some of the college students. I loved our church at the time. They would do free babysitting like once a month, and would do like a parents' night out. So I would utilize those type of things. It's like, okay, kids, you're going tonight to have fun. And then I would use that to get stuff done. Like what do I need to get done tonight that, you know, I can't do with my kids? And so, I would utilize resources like that to be able to get stuff done.
So that's something I'm hearing actually, and what you're saying is another thing to put on the list or to calendar. Actually, that was kind of what I was hearing was the time blocking. Get it on your calendar because those things keep forward progress. And even if you're not completed necessarily with a particular item. It's keeping the ball rolling. And that maybe one of
Right.
those items should be an awareness of what community resources you actually do have access to.
Mhm.
So how could people just start with that? Are they looking at community boards or calling the churches,
Yeah,
going to the
I
website?
mean, you don't know until you look. Do searches, and again, I encourage you, if it's not your church home or not people definitely look into it.
Mm,
But look, like do what, events in my area, free babysitting nights in my area. Um, a lot of times you'll have colleges or even sometimes the high schools, when they're doing fundraisers, they'll, do babysitter nights or things like that. So look at, or, the other great one with high schools and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts is they will come and do help with yard work. So if that's something on the back burner that you need done, look and see who does volunteer yard work or does it for donation. Um, and you can get some of that done, sometimes get help with that just for, a simple donation. Or you can ask, if you can't afford donations, it never hurts to ask and say, hey, could I do a trade? If you have something you can trade or barter, um, hey, would you come mow my yard for the most fantastic meal you're ever going to have in your life, you know, um, and work it out. Some people are willing to do that, or they're willing to trade. I did a lot of swaps when we lived on campus. It actually was great. Um, we had, a lot of young moms who had a lot of kids. Um, what was funny was like our kids hated doing chores at our house, and each of us realized we had that problem. So the one day I was like, huh, you know what though? My kids really love helping you out. And I was like, what if we just did like a couple times a week? I send my kids over to clean your house and you send your kids over to clean my house. And for a while it worked. Like the kids thought it was so much fun. Like we did kid swaps and we had them clean each other's houses. We also did like, when my kids were really, really little, we would do certain days. We had a rotation where we would take each other's babies, and watch them for like a couple hours so that we had like 1 or 2 days a week where we just had a couple hours of quiet time to pray and to spend with the Lord or to, take baths and just kind of take care of ourselves. And then we also would like plan out like pamper parties where, like we would do fun events like where, um, we would take turns with the moms, like kind of sitting with the babies, and the other ones would be doing different pampering things. And so we came up with fun ideas like that helped get through some of those challenging times.
that is fun. And everything that you've been sharing and the ideas, I love the ideas that you're just firing them off, but they all end up where they just lift everybody's spirits, like just the overall morale and how you're feeling. If it's incorporating your kids into coming up with something to do on the weekend as a reward for helping out, whatever it is, it's like it's going to lift everyone's spirits up, and you won't feel so alone in what feels like the worst quagmire. It's like, no, you aren't alone. It
Right.
shifts focus, shifts your attitude away. And it always seems that way too, that when I know if I'm having a really difficult day where I'm feeling, if it's down in the dumps or whatever it is, once I talk to or like minister to somebody else, I end up feeling like I also received the benefit of the ministry because I feel
Mhm.
better overall. It's like it lifts my head up too. So those are
Right.
really Those are great.
And some of the things with that you can do, see if you have a couple neighbors that are willing to do going on meals together, where each, you take turns 1 or 2 nights a week getting together and switching off, like who brings the main dishes that night, who brings a side, or and you just get together and fellowship and talk about the issues, brainstorm together. How are you going to get through the hard times together? And you know all of that helps. So yeah, and that's the thing, is not being afraid to ask for help and to look at the resources that are available to you in your community. Children with high behaviors, that often can be a really hard challenge to work through. It can be very draining on parents, especially if you're a single mom or dad having to deal with that. And I know, like, when I went through that challenge, um, you know, as a chaplain, I knew some of the different networks. You can try counselors, you can, I don't really encourage this one often, but sometimes there are good social workers with CPS. So, it doesn't ever hurt to, maybe just go in and just say, hey, like, I need some brainstorming. I'm having a kid with high behaviors. Do you have any thoughts or any ways that could help? Um, you know, and not being afraid to, like, admit that, hey, like, I need help. Like in our situation, they really, like, they did some brainstorming and help, but really, like, there were moments I was like begging, it's like, take my kid. I can't deal with this. And they wouldn't. So it's like, it's like, okay, Lord, here we are. In our situation too, we had the police involved because there was so much violence, and it just felt like I was screaming out for help, and nobody would help. And I was so exhausted and still injured with my shoulder issues, having to deal with a violent child. And it's like, how do you navigate that? Um, and when you have them like sneaking out of the house or running away, that adds to, it's almost like your entire world has to stop. Everything just keeps getting more and more backlogged. Your jobs get in danger because you've got the school calling you saying you need to come get your kid. And what do you do when your whole world is revolving around your child who's violent and angry and unmanageable? And on top of that, you know, it's causing destruction to the rest of your life. Like, you can't maintain your job or other things when you're having to deal with those issues. And, literally you have to put everything else on the back burner just to get that child under control. And, for those situations, um, sometimes we have to turn to places we don't want to. Um, there were times that I had to call for the police's help, you know, and that would just be more frustrating for me because they really didn't do anything, You're like, what's the purpose?
Mm.
You know, but at least it was like, they would at least help, you know, ride in their car next to my son and escort him home, but it was like, I really wanted more help. Do you want to keep him for an hour? Just like drive around. I'll pay you free donuts, coffee. No, I'm just kidding. But we actually had it was frustrating at times, but I would say overall, I am very supportive of, our police officers. They, um, even though I felt like it didn't help in the situation at the time, they really are good people. But, sometimes you have to turn to things that, you may not have wanted to as avenues for help, so look at, again, you begin to look at your community. What is available in my community? Are there counselors? whether at the schools or maybe there's a counseling office near you. Who can you reach out to, and maybe even having a conversation, a brainstorm, saying what networks, what opportunities, what is available in my area that could help me navigate this problem. Another good place is hospitals have chaplains. Sometimes you can go in there and just say, hey, is there a chaplain or a social worker I could just talk to briefly? And I just need some brainstorming. I just need to know if there's any networks that they are aware of in my area that may be able to help me in my problem. Often they're very highly networked, so they're a great resource. The other one would be, churches, reaching out to the churches. And, I don't attend a Jesuit Catholic church, but I will tell you that those secretaries at that Catholic church are the most knowledgeable people about your community, or they know who you need to talk to answer your question. So sometimes just calling them and saying, hey, like, here's briefly my problem. I'm having trouble with a child. What resources are you aware of that I could talk to get help? And maybe they're going to say, well, the priest is the person you're going to talk to. It really doesn't harm you to go in and to say, here's my problem. Here's my challenges. What resources are you aware of that might be available to me? So utilizing things that are available in our community, and just because people have different beliefs, or, not everybody in every institution is evil. There are good people in different institutions. So, you have to still be guarded and put up your boundaries as you network and reach out to people. But it doesn't hurt to network. Sometimes those people that you think are the last the last resort, or you're like, I would never have a conversation with that person. Those usually are the people that are going to have all the networking, brilliant ideas that you need that are solutions to your problems. Even in this is another great resource I learned. Many of the tech colleges have business offices, and they are a wealth of knowledge, not only for your business, but about financial things in your area. So, like, they were people who, knew about not only the job center, but sometimes they're really creative and they know a lot of the programs that your state runs. Some of them know programs that give scholarships, or are looking for people who want to start their own business or entrepreneur. They will help you write up a business plan. They will tell you step by step what you have to do. They will know resources for advertising, marketing, all of that stuff. So sometimes, though, even something like that, going into the community or the tech colleges and seeing what resources are available to you, may be something that's really helpful. So I encourage all of that. And, sometimes they can help with kid issues too, where, what programs might be available for my children, because they usually are pretty aware of, different things that are operating in your community, and can recommend things that may indeed help. So
that's good. That is a wealth of information and ideas. And at the end of the day, it's not all for naught. There are resources, there are opportunities. It is not a dead end road. So when it looks like one, you have multiple different areas that you can take a look at and get hope from, and keep that forward progress going, as long as you're getting it on the calendar, blocking the time for it. And how about the now in your situation, with the shoulder surgeries and just having the responsibility, you're a mom, multiple children, just so much going on. It might have been your overall need that kind of kept you propelled forward, because there might be several different things that if it dropped, if there's a certain ball in
Right.
the air and it drops, it's going to have an immediate impact in
You're
the
like
family.
the atomic bomb that ensues, I cannot endure. So
Exactly. So now for folks that are a little less, I don't know, a little less ambitious with themselves, that might tend to go more into the I'm not trying to find the right word, that can just
the
almost
lack
feel,
of motivation.
yeah, and
Um,
crushed by the whole thing.
yeah, you can get it, it's I think it's common for people to kind of get that overwhelming oppression, and you get where you just kind of shut down because there's so much and you don't even know where to start. And that's the hardest part, is when you don't know where to start. So that's, although it's difficult and you may not be motivated to sit down and make a list, that's why I encourage the writing and making a list and holding yourself accountable to work through that on a daily basis. Nobody can get it done for you. And the truth is that if we allow that oppression to overcome us, there's only a few things that's going to happen. One, if you refuse to work and care for yourself and eat, you're going to have family or friends or people who live around you who are going to call, you know, this, we'll say the hospital specialist, and you're going to end up in a mental health ward, or a shelter. If you continue to refuse to pay rent or work or get a job so that you can, the truth is that those things can only go so long and you're not going to have them anymore. So that alone can be a motivator. If you have a place, you know, you don't want to end up in someplace worse. Shelters are not convenient, especially if you have children. Um, you know, some are well run, but the majority, let's be honest, it really is an area of deprivation. And once you're there, it's really challenging to get housing or, get a place to rent after you've been in a shelter. A lot of those places that are renting, they don't want a renter who's coming out of a shelter. So the best way is to try to avoid those type of situations. The only way to avoid it is that you have to take the initiative. You have to set your heart and your mind to get stuff done. In the shelters, I used to work with alongside of one of the shelters doing processing classes. And, the method was always the same. We would get together a couple times a week and we would process, what are the challenges you're facing? What steps are you going to take to get out of that challenge? And some of them were really hard things to work through. How do you change your life around when you're coming out of prison? How do you get out and get a job when you've got a record? How do you, get a job or get into housing after you've had a lot of issues with drug or alcohol abuse? Only you can make that change. And only you can seek out the help that you need in order to make that change. And if you don't change or make the change or take the steps to make the change happen, the truth is you're going to stay in that situation and it's going to get worse. And, those roads lead down to death and destruction. And is that really, the truth is that 95% of the time, if you're still in that situation, it's because you're choosing. And that's a hard reality to accept, that you're in your situation because this is what you're choosing. If it's not what you want to be choosing, make your list. What are you choosing? How can you help to change your situation? So, it's hard to be real with yourself sometimes, to say, I'm here. Yes, unforeseen circumstances may have happened to me. I may have had a boss from hell that, ruined my career and fired me. How are you going to change the situation? You're not bound down by what travailed with that boss for the rest of your life. So how are you going to change the situation?
That's good. You're not bound. Everybody needs to hear that again. You're not bound to the situation. You're not bound to your circumstances, and they have
Right.
the ability to choose something different, something better, and to change that.
Yeah. Or even like, that was a, reality in my situation too. After my, throughout my surgeries, the truth was that I had, muscles in my shoulder that were constantly tearing. And it didn't matter what I did. I did everything, exactly like I was supposed to do according to doctor's orders. I spent 5 years in physical therapy and OT and did everything, followed every rule, and yet I still had a shoulder that was tearing constantly. And finally, it got to the point after the third surgery where it again was torn. And the reality was that if I chose to have a fourth surgery, I would lose all my above head motion. And, for me, it sounds silly, but, people who've gone through shoulder surgery might understand more. But when you're in a brace for long periods of time and you're a female and you have long hair and you like your long hair, it gets really hard with those braces. Everything's Velcro, it's all sticking, your hair gets caught everywhere. All I wanted every day was for my hair to be up in a ponytail. And it was like, I just did not want to give that up. And it's like, man, if I couldn't even lift my arm up, past this point, how am I gonna like do my hair? Like, you really can't. Like, you're stuck. And so I had to come to that point where it's like, okay, Lord, something has to give. The reality is that I'm limited. No matter how much I would like to do things normal, that included work, job situations, no matter how much I want to do those things, I can't. I'm limited. Part of that time I worked at a coffee shop, but because of the nerve damage, like I could not like keep my arm out extended and hold something weighty in it. Like, I would go to pick up a cup and it would be like, whoop, like it would go flying because my nerve with the hand would not allow me to keep that grip. So it's like, well, I can't be throwing cups at the customers. That's just not gonna work, right? So a lot of it then, instead of getting overwhelmed saying, I can't, I can't, I can't, I started saying, what can I do? A lot of things I had learned to compensate to do quite a lot with my left hand. So then it was, well, what jobs can I do where everything that I have to do, I'm doing left-handed? You know, what is available to me with that? What do I need to do, to rest the shoulder, to keep it moving, to keep it from getting frozen shoulder? Part of it was diet. I had so much inflammation. So it's like, okay, let's look at natural things. You know what? Celery is really cheap. Celery is one of the best anti-inflammatories there is. So guess what, Jess? Even though I really hate juicing greens. I like greens, but I really hate juicing them and drinking them. But if that's what I have to do faithfully every morning to help with that inflammation and the pain, then that's what I have to do. If I have to change my diet, I'd like to be I like to be a convenience eater. I like to eat on the go, but it's like maybe that needs to change. Maybe I need to make sure that I'm not doing that so that I'm eating healthy and I'm being mindful about what I'm eating because it's vital to my healing. Maybe I need to look into other stuff to help, ensure that healing. So I know a lot of that challenge you know, with the mindset really happens, especially when you're dealing with chronic things, especially pain. When you're not sleeping, you're in a high level pain all the time. You're physically incapacitated in some way. But no matter what the challenge is, the solution is the same. You have to make choices and you have to pray. You have to ask the Lord, what can I change? What do I need to change, Lord? Am I doing things? Is my lifestyle, the things that I'm choosing, keeping me bound in this downward spiral? And what do I need to shift or change to get out of it? And not being afraid to make those shifts and change. One of my sons is just so blunt, and the one day he said it, I had to laugh so much. But I was complaining about my weight, and he's like, "Why do you always complain about that?" He's like, "When are you going to do something about it?" He's like, "I don't see you getting up doing jumping jacks." And I was like, huh, like at first you're offended, but then you're like, he's absolutely right. Like, what did I just eat today? Am I really intentionally making time for exercise? And so just sometimes being blunt like that, saying, okay, like I'm unhappy with this. When am I going to make a change about it? Why do I continue to complain and remain stuck in this situation?
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good. So yeah. So I'm thankful because that just went like
Right.
I just got a good adjustment on that too. And I'm glad that I started hitting the treadmill every morning again. It's a really valid point. Thank you. So I don't know who said it, but thank them.
Right.
Like, yeah. And it's so hard too, because like I know you, and you are such a hard worker. Like there is not a moment that you're not working, answering emails, producing things, asking the Lord, what is next, lining this up, putting this, I mean, it's just, you're nonstop and always so focused, on what he's doing. And so how easy is it to be so focused on everything else that you don't focus at all on the little thing that needs the adjustment? It sometimes seems to be the hardest thing to get to.
Right. That's where multitasking comes in great, It's like, oh, okay, I get cold. I always have a heat pack. I warm up that heat pack before I head into my shows, right? So it's like, that's 2 minutes. I'm standing there in front of the microwave, Hey, great time. I can get my squats and my I do. It's so bad.
It's smart. I just had the same rebuke from a friend of mine just the other evening. She was like, well, if you can't go and hit the treadmill for 15 minutes, then when you're going here and going there, and when you go to the microwave, you could at least do some squats. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right.
You're like, I could use that 2 minutes to do squats.
Yes.
I must say too, now we have this is in compliments. I hope they're watching this show, but we've had friends that have a sense of humor, and they sent me a little button with a goat on it. My kids put it above the microwave, but it just, like, when you push it, it's like, meh. So it's like now when I need some humor, like I'll sit there and push that little goat button and do my exercises. Just for entertainment. It's like, all right, let's make it fun. And my kids come out and they're like, what are you doing? You look so weird.
You hit it every time you complete a squat.
No, no.
I think
Maybe
you should do
that
it every time.
that'd be funny. Use the goat to count.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I think it's a great idea.
Yes. Hopefully that will add some humor to them. I do utilize it.
It's good because it'll signal out loud to them like I'm taking action on my choice
Right?
to stop
Yes.
complaining about it and do something about it. It's a reminder for them too. I think it's fabulous.
Absolutely. So, well, let's pray. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
just want to encourage everybody out there, utilize, make the resources, share the resources that you find. Um, you know, that would be something if, somebody wants to embark on that endeavor. That's always needed is, to know different areas, what are the resources available for different hardships that are going on. And make those available to your community. Things that you learn about if you do up a sheet about everything available for your problem that you're facing, you can then, take copies of those to different people in your area that coordinate resource things like that. Find out who coordinates disaster resources, or take stuff to your resource center and say, hey, feel free to hand this out to anybody who might need it. And that way, you're helping others navigate those same situations. So I encourage that. But let's go ahead and pray. And, I really feel led to speak in to everybody here, some verses that the Lord has given me this week. For encouragement and stuff. And the first one is, let me find it here, Psalm 27:6, which says, and now my head will be lifted up above the enemies around me. In his tent I will offer sacrifices with shouts of joy, and I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to the Lord. Sometimes just singing praise is that, little push that gives us the breakthrough. The next one is Isaiah 40. Comfort my people, says your God. Now that's an actual order. So the Lord this day orders your comfort. Comfort my people, speak tenderly to Jerusalem. Proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all of her sins. Therefore, a voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. For every valley shall be raised up, every mountain will be made low, the rough ground shall become level, the rugged places a plain. For the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all the people will see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. So I pray this week that you will indeed feel the comfort of the Lord, that you'll be able to make time. So that's the first step, make time to sit down and make a list. Sort through your issues, and that becomes really the framework for working through your problems. So if you need to share it, please share it. You can always email stuff to me, share it, and we can help work through issues together. So have a blessed week.
It won't stop.